ever since the Maulers first show up in episode 1 of... It's clear they're not just some muscular villains with genius-level intellects. No, there's something more. Something that digs deep into a philosophical dilemma far more disturbing than cloning itself. What does it really mean to be the original? Who's the real individual, and who's just a copy? The inner struggle between the Maulers goes way beyond pride or power. It's an existential crisis, one that's echoed throughout the history of philosophy. As the series unfolds, both clones are locked in a psychological battle with an almost predictable outcome. Each one is desperate to be the original, and when the truth finally surfaces, the one who finds out he's the clone explodes with rage, a desperation so intense it leads straight to murder. And that right there is the real tragedy of the Maulers. Their identity isn't defined by appearance or memory. It hinges entirely on knowing where they came from. John Locke, in his essay concerning human understanding, argued that personal identity doesn't depend on the physical body, but on the continuity of consciousness and memory. By that logic, both Maulers should technically be the same person, at least until the moment of cloning. They share the same memories, the same thoughts, the same experiences. But the moment one of them learns he's the copy, his entire sense of self collapses. Identity stops being just about memory, it becomes a matter of authenticity. Nietzsche offers a different take with his idea of the will to power. To him, the individual is constantly trying to assert themselves, constantly trying to overcome their own limits. And we see this unfold in a jaw-dropping scene during Season 2. After helping Armstrong Levy, which ends in complete catastrophe, one of the Maulers survives, but he's badly injured. Half his body is wrecked. As always, he clones himself, but this time, something's different. The moment the clone wakes up, it's obvious who the original is, just by looking at them. The original, fully aware of his identity, immediately wants to make more clones. That certainty fuels his confidence and ambition. Meanwhile, the clone, now fully aware of his lesser status, sees his existence as a mistake. He sees the other as a threat, so what does he do? After grappling with the awful reality and accepting his inferiority, heavy quotes, he decides to eliminate the original. Why? Because doing so would let him reclaim the title for himself, or at the very least, level the playing field. He just wants to be equal. That's why the Maulers can only exist peacefully when neither of them knows who's the original. As soon as one of them does, someone dies. And then they clone again. Jean-Paul Sartre, from an existentialist perspective, would say the Maulers represent the nausea, the fear, that comes with true freedom. When faced with the truth of their existence, they can't handle it. According to Sartre, identity isn't something you're born with, it's something you create through your actions. But the clone can't bear the thought that his very being comes from someone else. Killing the original becomes his only way out, his only chance to escape the crushing anxiety of reality by denying it. As we follow their story, their identity crisis becomes a never-ending loop of paranoia, betrayal, and bloodshed. Philosopher Jacques Derrida argued that the idea of an original is a made-up concept, and that copies can be just as real, just as authentic, as the so-called prototype. If we apply that to the Maulers, it means the distinction between clone and original shouldn't matter. They share the same essence. But the Maulers can't accept that. To them, life only has meaning if there's a first and a second. That idea connects directly to another disturbing truth. Our identities aren't just about who we are, but how we set ourselves apart from everyone else. If one of the Maulers admits he's the clone, then his identity shrinks to a mere shadow of the other. Martin Heidegger, in Being and Time, introduces the concept of being toward death, the idea that we must face our own mortality to truly understand what it means to exist. For the Maulers, death isn't just inevitable, it's the only acceptable way to end their identity conflict. They cannot coexist if they know who's who. The only resolution is for one of them to be erased. And here's the darkest irony of all. The Mauler who survives is, in the end, no winner. Even if he kills his clone, he's just setting himself up to face the exact same dilemma again in the near future. This conflict has no ending. It's a spiral of self-destruction. Michel Foucault once said that power isn't just about force, it's about defining truth. And when one Mauler kills the other, he doesn't just become the only one, he also redefines reality. He is the original now. That's the power of narrative control. But here's the tragedy: the cloning process that lets them stay alive is the very thing that keeps truth from sticking. Every new clone inherits the same struggle, the same desperate need to prove themselves. Their dilemma isn't just the result of science, it's a metaphor for the endless human search for authenticity. Through the Maulers, the series forces us to ask a haunting question. What makes us, us? Albert Camus, in The Myth of Sisyphus, said that life is absurd because we keep searching for meaning in a universe that offers none. And that perfectly describes the Maulers. No matter how hard they fight, no matter how many times they destroy each other, they will never resolve their identity crisis. Every victory is fleeting. Every certainty slips away. From Camus' point of view, true rebellion wouldn't be killing the other, but accepting the absurdity of it all, learning to live with it. That's what Robot, also known as Rudolph, managed to do. He spent his entire life wanting a new body, and when he finally got it, he chose to die. He accepted that his new self would carry on, and that he was no longer necessary. But the Maulers, they can't do that. They're trapped in a story of dominance and inferiority, unable to accept that they're both the original and the copy. Soren Kierkegaard spoke about anxiety as the dizziness of freedom, the terror of infinite choices. And that's exactly what the Maulers embody. They can clone themselves over and over again. There's no limit to their existence. But that doesn't set them free. It dooms them. The original Mauler never even considered cloning himself until he knew he was the first. And that reveals something chilling. The freedom to replicate yourself is meaningless without a solid foundation of identity. Only when he defines himself as the original can he act without fear. Which brings us to a final, deeply unsettling question: the ship of Theseus paradox. If every part of an object is replaced over time, is it still the same object? Applied to the Maulers, the question becomes, if cloning continues endlessly, at what point does the Mauler stop being the original? Each version inherits the previous one's memories, but the body is new. So, does the original really matter anymore? That question will never have a clear answer, and maybe that's the point. The Maulers live in a paradox, a loop without escape. Because the real issue isn't who was made first. The real issue is their total inability to accept that identity is a mental construct, not an objective truth. Or is it? What if identity is real and they really are just copies? Clearly, they are copies, but if they retain every memory, every personality trait, every ambition, then maybe the very first Mauler, the one we never met, still exists in some form. Maybe that essence carries on, death after death, clone after clone, and if that's the case, can we really say they're worthless copies? Maybe the only way to prove clones are hollow shells, no different from a robot mimicking human behavior, is to prove the soul exists. If the original Mauler had a soul and the clones don't, then yes, that would make them nothing more than empty husks. But then, what is the soul? Is it in our mind, our memories? Can it be transferred? Does it even exist? Personally, I like to believe it does, even if there's no way to prove it. If this story got under your skin, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and let me know in the comments. Do you think the soul exists? Or are we all just copies pretending to be real? See you in the next video, Seekers of Knowledge.